John Felt here. Welcome to the Mershman Seeds weekly weather briefing, July 6, 2019. Hope everybody had a great 4th of July and is enjoying the 4th of July weekend. You know, in some spots there have been some thunderstorms with some fireworks with thunder and lightning. Most areas not. But overall it's beginning to feel a whole lot more like summer with humid conditions. Now, the last 2-3 weeks I talked a bit more optimistically with maybe beginning to catch up with some hotter weather and drier weather. I think that's going to still be the theme of this briefing, but having said that, we're going to have a lot of localized issues with some lagging crop condition. But again, I think overall, I think the trend line is improving. So last week, you can see here that we had quite a bit of precipitation over parts of the western Corn Belt, particularly South Dakota, into the central Corn Belt, into southern parts of Minnesota. Everywhere else, it was very scattered. And this type of pattern here sort of looks like popcorn, a little hit and miss. This is very typical climatologically for summertime. So I don't think that in most areas is necessarily a bad thing. But look at Illinois, a lot more yellow there. That's over 2 inches in spots. So again, it's not the real widespread rain. With the exception of this area right in here, this is definitely a very widespread heavy rain in that area. So many areas, looking at Iowa, for example, not so bad. Most areas, in the Northwest, we don't necessarily need that much rain, but most areas it was pretty good for the state of Iowa. Now, when I say it feels like summer, look at the dew points here. I put something out on this last week. Dew points anywhere from the low 70s into the middle 70s across the eastern Corn Belt and parts of the central region, and that's because the soils are so wet. The emerging and growing crop is taking that moisture out of the soil. The daily heat is as well, and that's putting that into the lower atmosphere, and that's giving us another chance of daily thunderstorms in many areas. Sort of a feedback loop. So on the other hand, it's making us feel sort of miserable out there because the heat index is getting up quite high, and in the morning it's pretty stifling with these high dew points. So temperatures were well above normal last week over the entire middle part of the nation. The areas in red are over 6 degrees above normal, so between the high temperatures and the humidity, definitely felt like midsummer type conditions. So soils are beginning to dry out in many spots. You can see we've had some increase in soil moisture with the heavy rain in the west, but most areas, if you recall, if you listen to my briefings on a weekly basis, a lot more blue, the dark blue, which is really saturated. And actually this lighter blue is pretty much ideal for this time of year, is that we have a bit more soil moisture than normal. And my message I've been sort of saying is we didn't get too hard hit with the very early season conditions. We're probably in pretty good shape this year because that soil moisture is adequate to withstand some dry periods. So if we get hot and dry in many areas, the roots would get down and be able to tap that soil moisture that's in there. So again, I know there's some areas that are still really struggling. Other areas, though, if we got the crop in and it got growing, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape, or at least be improving as we go forward. Now, rivers are still running quite high. The main stem rivers are beginning to fall, or they have been falling, and they're continuing to fall, and I don't see any rain that's going to reverse that. So keeping my fingers crossed, I think the major flood situation and the prolonged flood situation hopefully is winding down now and getting at least much closer to normal than we've seen since many months now. Soils are getting, because of the above normal temperatures last week, soils have really warmed up now in the 70s over many areas, the entire eastern Corn Belt, and pushing into the near 70 degrees in the northern Corn Belt. Okay, so right now the jet stream is well above normal here. You can see it's well up to the north. Oftentimes they refer to this sort of the ring of fire, they call it, where right along the jet stream is where we have our action because we need that atmospheric energy. That's why South Dakota had so much rain last week. For south of that, it's not much action at all. So we look forward here. What we see here is a couple things I want to point out. First of all, we see a bit of a dip in the jet stream right here. That's going to bring a little bit of cooler air. Now, I put out a trend alert last week, I believe it was, for cooler and wetter. Well, sometimes I sort of got to say I don't know if that's quite working out. The cooler will be there, but it's really not going to be all that significant. And I think it's very quickly going to be replaced with this high pressure here building, and that's going to be warmer than normal ahead, probably week 2. Wanted to show you over the south central U.S. Look at the dominance of this high pressure. Here's your reach of high pressure, and it just sort of dominates, sits down here. So we're looking at prolonged hot and dry conditions over this part of the region. So again, this is that ring of fire here, and it could be active in that region. South, it's going to be quite a bit hot and dry. So there's your cool air, and I don't even want to really call it cool air. A little bit of a dip in the jet stream that comes in this week. It'll knock temperatures down a bit, back to normal. Maybe if we get some clouds a little bit below normal, there's a blue. But as we get out about 6 days out, we start to get into the influence of this high pressure. And what we see is once we get into week 2, most of the region above normal temperatures. Now, as far as precipitation goes, nothing all that significant. We have some regional type precipitation, which is sort of like this. We've got some summertime hit and miss at 30 to 40% over many areas, but overall nothing widespread, nothing extremely heavy. Maybe with some of that jet energy to the north, maybe a bit heavier precipitation, but overall it looks like a sort of a summertime pattern. Heat, humidity, and chancy type precipitation, but again scattered in coverage. Wanted to point out over the south central U.S. The dangerous heat index. Purple is over 105, nearing 110 in that region, even 115 in a few spots close to it. So very high heat and humidity. Okay, so there's our in the 6 to 10 day. Here's our pulling back to close to normal, and then as we get into week 2, the entire Corn Belt above normal temperatures. Below normal precipitation 6 to 10, and then 8 to 14 also below normal. So just sort of repeat here, a bit of a pullback in temperature as we get into the 6 to 10 day range. That's that quote somewhat cooler weather I talked about, and then the 8 to 14 week 2 back to above normal temperatures. Precipitation, even though there will be some scattered showers and thunderstorms here and there, overall below normal precipitation. Now, like I said, some of our risks that we're looking for at, just real briefly here, heavy rain with the jet energy, some localized heavier rain, and then the heat and humidity. So that's this week's briefing. I hope you enjoy the rest of your 4th of July weekend. It looks like a summer type pattern that we're getting into here, and back to more of a climatologically expected type pattern. Anyway, we'll be talking with you again next weekend. Have a great week. Take care.